Our moderator for this session is the project and administrative manager at Documentary Africa, with extensive experience in finance, administration, and corporate communication across East African's arts, banking, and non-profit sectors. Perfect person to moderate funding, if you ask me. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me invite Renny Matsiko up onto the stage.
Allow me today welcome Bernard Chira, the founder and CEO of AT4D Trust and co-founder of Innovate, now Africa's first assistive technology accelerator with over 10 years experience in inclusive innovation, entrepreneurship, and disability-focused venture development across Africa and beyond. Welcome, Bernard. The next person is Doris Kamathi, the portfolio manager, African Collaborative, the Fund for African-Led Impact. Doris is the strategic development expert with experience in designing and managing programs for social enterprises across East Africa, with a focus on livelihoods, gender and youth empowerment through donor-funded initiatives. Welcome, Doris. Thank you, Ron. Our next panelist is Jesse Kaganthe, the Partnerships and Development Manager at Haverfund. Jesse is the Business Development and Partnerships Lead at Haverfund, where he designs programs and leads research to support creative enterprises and explore opportunities in Africa's creative technology sector. Welcome, Jesse. We can keep clapping until Jesse listen. I forgot to give the ground rules. We clap until someone sits, otherwise the ground might swallow us up. So thank you. Ron?
Yes. Hello. Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so I don't have a fancy video like my other panelists. Mine are quick slides. So Haverfund has been in existence for about 13 years now. And in those 13 years, we've been able to learn a lot about the creative sector and implement a lot of interventions in the creative sector through research, through capacity development and advisory, and through investment. One interesting program that I'm going to speak about a lot today is the Sanara program, which is an inclusive development program for creative and industry practitioners in Kenya. And as we speak about innovative financing, the slides would have shown that there are different models to be able to finance and invest in different kinds of entrepreneurs at different stages of their development, at different stages of their business life cycle. So I'm super excited to be able to speak about those different models. And yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, now that we're already into it, I think I'll let also Doris tell us more about the work that she does.
Thank you. My mic is working, eh? I need to check. So my name is Doris Kamathi, and I'm very excited to be here today because 10 years ago is when I made a shift to development space. And before that, I was a journalist. I was working in media. So the mismatch that the gentleman at the back was talking about, it's a very exciting time to see these two words that I belong to come together and the evolution that is going on in this space. But to mention what we do, I think most of you know us as African Visionary Fund. We recently launched our new strategy and rebranded, and now we are called African Collaborative. We need a clap for that. Okay. Rebrands always come with better things, and new strategies always come with good things. So we're very excited at that. So at African Collaborative, what we do is we work with African-led, African-founded organizations, and specifically we provide flexible and multi-year and flexible funding. And the reason why we do this is because we have not only seen, we believe strongly that African organizations that are rooted to the community have come up with most innovative, impactful, and even sustainable responses that speak to the most pressing issues across the continent. And since 2020, as a fund, we have partnered with 35 organizations across the continent, Sub-Saharan Africa specifically, and these organizations are spread across 13 countries. And one of the things we see in them is the amount of impact that they've been able to scale, they've been able to root into their community because of the support and because of working with us. And as you've seen in the video, our portfolio is very diverse. We are multi-sectoral, so we don't specifically focus on one sector. Our partners work in different areas. They work in health, they work in education, they work in technology, and even other emerging sectors as well. So briefly, that's what we do at African Collaborative.
Because we're also looking at, there could be people in the audience who are looking at to benefit from your organization. What would be the things that you say, this is the eligibility criteria to use such a word, this is what you must tick off for us to actually work with you? Could you quickly highlight those for someone else to know?
Sure. So our criteria is very simple. It's the simplest criteria. You just need to be an African-led, African-founded organization.
Well, I think most of us
and just to add on that is we partner with organizations in different development stages. So we're not looking for organizations that, too big. We are happy to work with you from any different stage of your development. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Bernard?
All right, hi, how is everyone doing? So quiet. It's very lonely to be on stage, by the way, because everyone is looking at you and it's like you're the authority, so let me exercise some authority. Okay, so my name is Bernard Shira. I think in this context, it's also good to say I'm a Skoll fellow from last year. The video you saw is a bit old, as you can tell with the hair. That was very neat hair. So the hair has taken some beating when that video was shot, we ran an accelerator. It's called Innovate Now. So we work in the space of empowering people with disabilities, like giving them the tools that they need to thrive. And I think you saw it in the video, so it did a job for me. I don't have to explain what AT is, but as you can tell, the way our society is structured, the way our society is designed, it's not very inclusive, is it? And it's both the physical world that we live in and also in the digital world. So the only way you can break some of these barriers is to look at how do you empower people to give them a voice. And my background is actually very different. I studied computer science and business many years ago. And I was working in the mainstream startup ecosystem. So I think I've been in the Kenyan entrepreneur support ecosystem, let me call it that, for close to a little bit over a decade now. So I've seen incubators come and rise, and I used to work in Strathmore University, which was actually the first university-based incubator in Kenya. But I left in 2019 to do some work that is very personal to me, because first it's about something I can relate to. We all loving doing things that we can relate to, right? So having a disability for me was, I never thought that my work and my personal life would collide, but I left to launch Innovate Now. And the whole idea was simple, is to say, why can't we have innovation in this area? And why can't disability be a topic that people want to build solutions for? And so that's what we've been doing for the last, this is our 6th year. And around 2023, we started thinking about the future and sustainability of what we are doing. And we therefore got inspired to launch an organization called AT4D. In full, it's Assistive Technologies for Disability Trust. And we are a disability innovation organization. Our work is to support entrepreneurs building solutions that serve primarily persons with disabilities, but generally everybody, because guess what? We are all in one way or another disabled, or gonna be disabled at some point in life. So let's get our heads out of the ground and accept this as a human reality and build a society where everybody can thrive. And so our work entails about, we support entrepreneurs in this space because this whole conversation of change makers, I strongly believe that entrepreneurs are change makers because the companies they run, the organizations they build, whether for profit or non-profit, are the ones that deliver that impact. So I do look at our organization as a catalyst, and I'm very happy to do it in a space that's close to my heart. Thank you.
And thank you. And just as a follow-up question, Bernard, and how has your fundraising journey been?
Ooh. Are we gonna go there? Okay, let's go there. Okay, so so when I left my previous job to get into this, I was very excited. For me, it was like, man, your mission in life is just, stars would never align this straight for anyone, right? So I was excited. It was a donor-funded project. That time it was funded by UK Aid. I fear it's now something different. People are rebranding because of what's happening. So I left Strathmore and I one-man team to launch this project, this idea. And we had funding. We thought we had funding for 3 years. That was in 2019. Around 2020, along came COVID. And donors said, you know what, we don't know what this thing is. We want to save money. So anything that was funded at that time by our donor was actually, there was a blanket funding cut, right? So in short, what people are experiencing now with the whole US fiasco, we went through the same thing back in 2019. So it's not easy because money is being pulled out of very important work. I mean, the work that we had embarked on, I think we had done 3 cohorts by then. Literally, the products that serve the people we impact, these are life-changing products. I mean, it's not luxury. It's giving someone the ability to do things, giving people hope. And all of a sudden, we're like, okay, guys, end of runway. And so it was, of course, shocking. It was a bit very scary. You don't know the future, basically. You're living in uncertainty. But when I check back at what entrepreneurship really is, especially people that solve big problems, you never have any guarantees, right? You never have any guarantees. Like every startup that's solved a problem and built a product that you use today, most likely they went through a near-death situation where they didn't know where their next round of funding will be or even know whether they'll get an investor. So we were in that space where we were like, okay, do we close this down and say, you know, here's a shiny report, there's potential here, or do we keep going? We kept going. So one of the things we did is you have to figure out how do you reduce your costs as you look for more money, right? So we quickly basically drove all our programs online. Up to today, we are an online fast accelerator program. And so a lot of the things we used to do in person, like people have to come in a room, now we could do online. And that enabled us also to reach more people from, like, not just Kenya. So as we speak today, our portfolio startups are spread across 11 countries, 9 in Africa. And so there is always an opportunity in difficult situations, especially with funding, because it does force you to reevaluate what is it that you're being funded for, and is it resilient enough to withstand the shocks. So luckily, we had 6 months, basically, to figure out a new grant, and we did. And along came Norwegian Agency for Development at the nick of time, because we only had budget until the end of 2021. and we needed a new budget for 2022. But this for me was a moment in time where I had to ask myself, what is the future and sustainability of what we're doing? And so from that point, I knew we had to establish an organization that can be anchored on a mission, that can have its own brand values, and that can have its own story, so that you attract the funding, because value, I usually say money follows value. So money will follow what you're doing regardless of how difficult it is, as long as it's creating value and changing somebody's life.
I like that you've actually pulled us again very forward to sustainability, which I'll come back to. But I like the HEVA fund and their model of funding. Maybe I'll let you just talk about how you do your model of funding for the creative entrepreneurs. And is that something that is working, or are there also new models that you are actually considering? Because, I mean, we cannot talk about how creatives cannot go to the bank and get a loan. So what are some of those things that you're trying to be the bank, but also then help creatives actually bring their ideas forth to life?
Yeah, thank you so much. Similar to Bernard, I believe HEVA's story starts in a similar way, based on a need. HEVA's founders are Kenyan creative practitioners who, at the time, also went to a bank and presented all of their good papers, all the contracts they had, and were told, no, this is not enough. And so they decided, okay, fine, if we're unable to get support from the existing infrastructure and ecosystem, what solutions can we come up with? And so HEVA started off as an experiment and experimented with different kinds of innovative financing models, looked into SACCOs, what would a SACCO for creative practitioners look like. All of this was considered, and eventually we landed on a fund, right? Through that experience also, we are very deliberate with our interventions, and we go back to the sector and ask, how would you like to receive funding? What are you able to present as some level of collateral? And then begin to innovate our solutions around that. And it has worked well over the years. We've been able to make a case for the creative industry, starting off, of course, with patient capital, such as seed funding or grants for development, and then kind of now testing out zero-rated loans. Can creatives absorb financing and then be able to repay it without interest, and then start introducing interest, just as we try to move the creative practitioners within our portfolio from this kind of aid sort of financing more towards sustainability and commercial financing. Some of the models that we've worked are very tailored, or that have worked are very tailored. We do, first of all, tailor our repayments towards whatever creative enterprises revenue schedule. So that has been very interesting. Unlike banks, we also do accept other forms of collateral. We won't ask you to sell your land and your cars and your houses. We look at contracts, for instance. If you're a filmmaker and you have a contract, that is your collateral and security for a loan, for instance. We also look at things like creative IP, and I think that's definitely, as we go towards sustainability and financing for the creative industry, which is primarily where we work. Creative IP is your biggest negotiating tool, and so definitely we are trying to push the needle and allow, and also lead the way for other traditional lenders to look at creative IP as a security. Mm-hmm.
I also know that you do give grants, right? Just apart from the other models. Could you give some context also on the grants that you do give out?
Yes. As mentioned earlier, definitely the creative industry has always been a space, creative and cultural industry has always been a space that people perceive as risky. And this is because, again, the returns from this space can be modest, especially when you're starting out. And so definitely we agree that as much as we want to move the creative and cultural industries towards sustainability and commerciality, we definitely need a season of development financing. And so that's where our grants come into play. For instance, if you're a new entrant into the creative industry, you definitely need some time to be able to ideate, to be able to do your research, to be able to innovate new products, to be able to test out new markets. All of that can be very difficult to do from out of pocket. And then once you have a proven business model, then that's when we would be able to offer a commercial loan and see how your business reacts to that as well.
I must say we'll have time for Q&A, but if you do have a question, please raise your hand up and you can ask the question within. Yeah. And to you again, Doris, because your model is also you do get funds. I'll just put it literally, you get funds, you also then support African-led initiatives. What is that you could say funders can actually stick and support you to support other people? What are some of the things that you've worked along with funders to have your projects funded?
So just before I respond to your question, I want to respond to the question you asked me about our criteria. So we don't leave the space feeling, oh, we're African-led, African-founded, now dish the money, right?
I was about to come after this,
right?
this panel.
Yeah. But of course, as a fund, we will look at organizations around, your sustainability, your finances, how you're managing that. That's basic, right? And we have our criteria published on our website, so you can look at it. But we do know, traditionally, these things were very undermining. Like, it was very difficult to get into the space because your finances will be scrutinized, your feasibility will be asked questions on how sustainable that is, your ability to scale. And as a fund, we've created a space where partners come to us and tell us, we've tested this and we've seen it's working. We don't have a system to support us to scale, but if you join us, if you partner with us, we'll be able to scale this model. So those are some of the things we look at as well. So the basic is, yes, African-led, African-founded, but also look at some of those things that, to make sure that we are accountable as well. As you said, we get resources from other philanthropies, other funders as well, and then we distribute it to our partners. So your question is, could you please repeat your question?
So my question is,
Yes.
because you are getting funds, how do you have funders stick and support or trust that you will actually give out the money to African-led initiatives and in the end have what we're now calling the impact? How do you then measure the impact? So how are they coming back to trust you with these funds to give them to initiatives?
Yeah, so other funders trust us because of our model and because of our approach, which is centered around providing an opportunity for the philanthropy community to understand why we are very strong in investing for solutions that come from Africa and no solutions for Africa. And that is centered around three things that we do. One of the things we are very strong about is equity and radical accessibility. And what I mean by that is as I said, we fund our partners from different levels, whether you're a startup or a growing organization or a mature organization. And we have an open application that has enabled us be able to reach even the most under-resourced, most overlooked organizations. And as you saw in the video, we've been able to get organizations from across 13 countries from 2020. And because of that, then other funders are able to trust us. Something else as well that has been a very critical area for us is the mutual trust and respect that we have with our partners. We believe in letting the power be in the hands of those who are leading organizations. So through our portfolio services, through our unrestricted funds, we've been able to see organizations that are locally led are able to deliver solutions in real time and even in the most impactful way. And the last thing as well that has really increased the trust in the space for us as well is one of the things that we're very keen on doing is bridge building. So in addition to our grant making, we're very deliberate in making connections, in introducing our partners to other international funders as well. And as a result of that, we have been able to our partners cumulatively have been able to get an additional fund of $7 million since 2020 as a result of the nominations, the referrals that we make to other funders as well. And we take that job very seriously because we believe it's as important as our own grant making. So we don't just stop at giving you grant. We want to introduce you to other organizations that possibly you would not have gotten access to them because of, as the poet was saying, language barrier and all these things, systemic issues that we face as a continent, and we're not able to reach some of these funders. So, that's how we've been able to create that space and close the gap.
That's very good. That I like the fact that you get in a room and you can mention another organization that can actually, so you're in a room with a funder, you're like, yeah, you could support me, but you can also support Africa Collaborative. I think that's a very good, a noble thing to do, so thank you for that. Now, Bernard, considering the hitches that came with, funding being withdrawn, and then you come back again to it and you're moving, what could be a practical way maybe you could advise funders that they can support innovators in inclusive tech more effectively?
All right. So as I mentioned when I began, I've been working in the entrepreneur support space. These are organizations who would either be an incubator, accelerator program. That's been my industry, and I've watched that industry in Kenya kind of, grow. And when you work in a space like disability innovation, as I would want to call it, you kind of see how, funders look at anything that's disability. It's very hard for them to see you as both an entrepreneur support organization and an organization working in disability. And that's because traditionally, those two things are usually separate. A lot of initiatives around disability are very charity oriented or maybe government support systems. But here we are talking about really understanding what disability innovation is. And one of the examples I like to give, just to try and show how relevant this is to any sector. It doesn't matter whether you're in a creative sector or whatever sector it is. As human beings, there are values that will always be constant regardless of how different we are. People are drawn to justice, equity, inclusion. And when we talk about disability innovation, a lot of the times funders think, tell me about the market for this, disability innovations. How big is it? How many people would be having this problem? And those are very relevant questions that any investor has to ask, right? Total addressable market, target market, those are very important. But people, so when you talk about disability innovation, basically what we mean is that, yes, primarily we might be focusing on people with disabilities, but think about this as innovating for the broadest range of human abilities. So it's not only, so for example, I like giving examples that are maybe not too familiar with many people that actually turn out to be disability innovations, right? And I like starting with very, very simple ones. Like when I look around this room, I see people who are wearing very, very fashionable glasses, right? Right? So these glasses are beautiful, and they're a fashion statement to some extent, right? But let's get real. If you can't see without without those glasses, you're actually using assistive technology because those glasses are helping you to see. Now, some of the startups we have in our space are actually in the glasses space, and they're saying, look, these fancy frames are very expensive, and basically that industry is also very, if you go to people in the rural areas, they don't have access to glasses. Can't glasses be accessible to everyone? That's one example. Let's even get more unfamiliar with what's AT and what's not. Now, a lot of people don't know that things like, let's talk about captions or subtitles that you use to watch your movies and enjoy content in different languages. Guess what? That is a technology that was specifically built for people with hearing impairment because they can't hear the movie. But it's actually now a mainstream technology. But without people who are deaf, that technology would never have been invented. So if you're trying to figure out what are you talking about when you talk about assistive tech, and from an investor perspective, they're like, okay, now I start to see that there can be a market for this. So it's taking this thinking, and we call our approach disability innovation because it can be applied in any industry. And we basically say that if you want to practically support solutions that can have impact, look at, are they actually solving a real problem? And that you can never go wrong with solving problems for people with disabilities, because our problems are very real. You know, we are not like, actually our tech gets used as convenience by mainstream users, and that's okay, we are very happy to share. But those technologies exist because we are trying to build a society where everybody has a chance and they can actually achieve their potential. And so practical ways is talk to these organizations or entrepreneurs that are building for this market. Try to understand, yes, maybe their target market now might look like that small community of, say, people with mobility impairments. But think about it. When you travel out of this country, that's how you realize that if we don't make our public transport accessible to people with disabilities, we're not running a sustainable community, because it's not just people with disabilities that need access to that matatu or that bus. You know, a lady who's pregnant would have the same needs. Someone with a stroller, with a baby, would have the same needs. So it's not a pity thing. It's really understanding that if you design things well, and if you understand the diversities around people, and you see what disability does, it helps you understand humanity in the most diverse form. And then all we are doing here is to say, this can be done sustainably, and it's not just a charity issue. You can invest in an assistive tech startup, and it can actually give you returns. They might not be your crazy 100x returns for now, but it is investable. And we've seen a lot of the entrepreneurs we support even get funding from people like Hiva Fund. Actually, we have 2 companies that you might be funding that have come from our community. So the other practical thing, and I'm gonna stop after this. So in my experience running many incubation programs, accelerator programs, I've come to the conclusion that that sort of an organization cannot be sustainable if it's not investing in the startups or the entrepreneurs that they serve. It's not enough to train people and mentor them. If you're in that business, you have to go all the way. And I'm not saying everyone becomes an investor, but if you're an ESO, it's high time, entrepreneur support organization, you thought about the investment angle, because if you can't bet on the entrepreneurs you're supporting, why should other investors do the same? You should be the first one. And that's the direction we're trying to move with AT4D, to say now we have an accelerator program, it works, we can scale it, now we need the investment piece. So at Skoll, I actually led a delegate-led session, thank you very much Skoll Foundation, to actually present this idea that any entrepreneur support organization that works with people with disabilities or entrepreneurs solving for that sector ought to have an investment mechanism, a fund. And I presented the vision of a $10 million fund, and I believe it's going to come to life. Thank you very much.
I think also continually, as we check what's happening in the world, that funding keeps getting withdrawn from time to time. Maybe as Africans, it's a time also to think, are we really invested in our own programs or our own initiatives? We could have some people who have some money stuck somewhere. Are you willing to say, this is something that I believe in, and can I even put a cent or two for it to build up and have a community, have Africans fund our own initiatives? That way we can then stop relying solely on outside funding to be the one that drives all our initiatives or all our changes. Quickly, because I want to open this up to the panel, I want to the audience, I want the panelists to just give me one point where you can define sustainability outside financial survival, because that is what most of us do while we're at work. We're looking at financial survival, but I believe our work is just beyond financial survival. So just define sustainability for me in just a one-liner.
Okay, one-liner, that's hard. Okay. So I would say that sustainability, I would look at it at a point in time when whatever initiative you're running is able to overcome the initial friction or whatever is against you succeeding. And you get to this point where now you know how things work. You can explain your impact. You can explain the cost of what you do and the investment that you need for it to happen. And you are actually confident about your going concern.
One liner is a bit tough, but for us, especially as a fund, we've really looked at issues of sustainability, and one of the things we believe sustainability is when the community that is receiving the solutions or the responses that we are designing has ownership on that. And I'll give an example of an organization in Malawi that we have partnered with. It's called Akades. They work with youth farmers. And they train them around smart farming and how to market their products. And the youth are now able to actually go lease a piece of land and cultivate it and sell their product without even Akadi's support. And that's what sustainability is for us, when the community that's receiving all this program is able to own the solutions and do it by themselves, even in absence of our partners and even ourselves.
I'll also attempt to explain sustainability in one line. And also I'll explain it from the context of creative practitioners, because that is where we work and that's where our passion lies. In the creative industry, I feel like practitioners sit in a juxtaposed position where you need to be free to be able to create. However, you also need to have resourcing to be able to create. And the experience of looking for resourcing is not one that allows freedom. It's one that can be stressful and all that. So for me, sustainability within the creative industry is truly the freedom to be able to create, right? To be able to produce the things that as a human you feel like you have been created to produce. So when, and at such a point, when creative practitioners have the right kind of infrastructure, supportive environments to be able to create freely, I think at that point they'll be able to be self-sufficient and sustainable.
Okay, I think those are brilliant answers. And the reason I posed the question about sustainability is also, while you write that proposal, think beyond the proposal and what you're getting, what that means after that funding ends. Because I think when we think about sustainability, then it will make us also think, introspect, and then be better positioned to actually support our own. I will open up the questions to the audience, but because we're completely out of time because of the host, just say your name, your organization, and your question, just one sentence. And if I interrupt you to ask what's the question, please ask the question.
Hey, nilijua, I need funding too with Ninyi. So there's 1, 2. I see you, sir. I see you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So can you do the first 4? Yeah? I'm not a bad person. I just want to give us allowance to listen to the third panel. But what I can guarantee you is that they're not in a hurry to leave, yeah? They're not in a hurry to leave, so you guys can interact with them as soon as they're off the stage. All right?
Thank you very much. Quickly, so my name is Brian Obra. I am a filmmaker. And this question will go to Jesse and Doris mainly. Bernard, who's also called Brian, can also chip in at some point. So this is, because I know most funders offer the tools to people post getting the grants and the funds, right? Do you offer tools pre? And when I say pre, I'm talking about, do you train people how to apply for your funds? Do you train organizations how to become investment ready?
Can we take 3, then maybe they can answer, then the others?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Bakambito from Infotrack Research and Consulting. My question goes to Doris and to Bernard. And this is actually in terms of the social enterprise franchising. Instead of, like I was asking, instead of supporting startups, because most of the startups that are in the social space here, like e-buses, things like cocoa, gases, and things like that, they are mostly replicable from Asia. They have been done somewhere. So I was asking, like, in case like I want to franchise with maybe a social enterprise outside that has done something maybe in India and has impact there, and I want to get funding under these brackets, am I viable? Thank you.
My name is Wanjiro. I work at the intersection of development and gender justice. I also have a keen interest in telling human stories of resilience. This question goes to Doris. Beyond what you offer as a fund, what's the nature of your funding? Is it restricted? Is it unrestricted? But also, do you offer technical backing, especially for organizations, let's say, who do not have the systems, or we know the systems that international donors require? You need to have a board, you need to have a strategy to work with, you need to have, let's say, a yearly work plan for things that you'd like to achieve. So do you offer that kind of technical backing for organizations?
So I'll answer the question in two parts. And the first part is immediately yes. We do have a lot of investor readiness programs that we have done. We do have some resources also on our platform, or rather on our website, that you can be able to access. And those are like open source learning material on investor readiness. But beyond that, through our journey, we don't only exist as an investor, we do exist as a capacity development organization as well. And this is because we found that that process builds pipeline for us, right? A lot of work has gone into technical skilling for the creative enterprise, or for the creative industry. However, there's not a lot of education around the business of creative enterprise, right? And so we have been very deliberate in designing programs for that. Why maybe those programs don't go run all year through is because of sustainability and funding, and we don't usually ever charge for such programs. They're usually donor funded. So whenever we do have resources, we are able to curate such a program. But beyond that, for us, the proper participant or like beneficiary cycle would be to start with technical skilling, go into business development services and support, and then access capital once you already have some know-how on how to absorb this capital and repay it. Also, as part of our investment process, we do have a financial modeling process that really does allow you to sit with a financial modeler, go through your books and your revenue cycles, and actively understand what this investment means for you. In some cases, we do reject investment requests at that point because we feel like it will offer a necessary burden onto our business. And so through that point, you're able to understand, are you ready for investment? How much investment can you take? And what would be a comfortable way to be able to repay it?
I'll add to that. DocuBox also does provide their master classes and different labs where they actually train and teach you on some of the opportunities that are upcoming and how you can apply for them. Like, I think this morning I saw a LinkedIn video on the call that should be expiring by the end of this month, where you can actually apply. So that's also a resource you can plug in. Docker has done one also on how to actually prepare to apply for a call. So you could also chip in other organizations that are funding in one way or another to actually get that material online.
So around the question on franchising ideas or organizations, yes, we do fund that. For you as an organization that want to franchise, you want to come and establish the solutions that are working in another space here in Africa, obviously we would want you to share with us how do you see that solution working for the people that you want to serve. Share with us the rationale, why you see that's working, and we're very open to, of course, funding such kind of initiatives. And then on the question around, technical backing and support that we offer, yes, beyond funding, And it's interesting, I need to say this, that, as organizations in Africa, we're so much used to capacity building. That's what it used to be called. Now the language has shifted to something different. But one of the things our co-CEO did in 2020, she went around speaking to different organizations across Africa. And most of the organizations, surprisingly, I'm not even surprised, this was very obvious, said, we are capacitated enough, we've been trained, retrained, and untrained. We don't need any more training. So as an organization and as a fund, we are very aware, as Africans, we've been capacitated. Is that the right language? Yeah. Yeah, we've been given capacity building for as long as you can imagine, and that's not in our space. What we do as a fund is we are very open to organizations coming to us and saying, I'm setting up a board, and I do not have the knowledge around that. Could you help me find people, or if you have the knowledge or the skills to help me do that for me. And we are very collaborative with our partners. We listen to them. We talk to them every day to understand what their needs are and respond to that. So we don't have like a published capacity building criteria of what we do with the organization, no. Because we do realize that different organizations are at different level, their needs are different, and we want to hear from them before we can, respond to their needs.
Thank you very much. Like I mentioned earlier, the topic on funding can go on and on and on, and I'm sorry that I cannot take any more questions. Thank you so much for the host for allowing us extra minutes to just finish up. As we wrap up, because I want us to go thinking about certain things. So I want the panelists, just give me, I'll ask for a one line. I'm not asking for too much now, and I might cut you off if you go beyond that one line. If you could rewrite one rule in the funding system, what would it be? One line. Don't explain it, just one. Jesse, I'll start with you.
Yes. Again, going back to the conversation that we've had, funders do believe that you just need to provide capital, and organization will be ready to absorb it and have impact. But then for us, we've been advocating for a longer life cycle of investment, which starts with, again, capacitating, helping someone form the right structures, investing, and then also post-investment. So definitely the life cycle of investment needs to be longer, and yeah, we're trying to advocate for that.
So my one line, if I could change anything in the funding space, would be the power dynamic that exists between the implementing partners and the funding partners. As partners, we don't realize how much power we have, especially if you are close to your community. You understand your community better. You know the solution better than any funder would do. And that's where your power lies. That's where your boldness and courage lies.
Thank you, Doris. Bernard, one-liner.
Wow, I would put disability inclusion in the thesis of every funder.
Guys, I thought you also wanted to hear my one-liner, but, but I guess we can wrap up. Thank you very much. I would say 30% of funding should actually go to organizations or filmmakers with no prior experience, to allow new ideas, untold ideas, to be told somehow. So 30% as a starter. Thank you so much for a very pleasant evening. As we move forward, let's keep this conversation going beyond this panel. And all the panelists are still around. Let's engage them even as we go for the cocktail and the networking later on. Thank you so much, DocuBox. Thank you so much, Skoll Foundation. It was really a good conversation to have.